Hello and welcome back to HEMA Fight Breakdowns. Today I'm going to be testing the Mordhau, or the Mordschlag if you're a nitpicker, again. Only this time I'm going to be testing it on my own helmet and on my own head. And going into this test, I had three basic goals. I wanted to see whether or not the Mordhau could A, kill me, which obviously it didn't do since I'm recording this, B, knock me out, which, spoiler alert, it also did not do, or three, damage the helmet or theoretically another part of my armor to such a degree that it would render it useless as a piece of protective equipment. And what I'll tell you right now is that my assumption going into this test was that it would fail in all three of these areas. But what I found, very surprisingly, was that it actually was a lot more effective than I gave it credit for, and more importantly, that I genuinely believe that it can't really one-shot kill you or one-shot knock you out, but it is still effective enough that if you have an idea of what you're going to throw after the Mordhau or the Mordschlag, and you effectively are able to use these follow-up techniques to create a kind of flow chart of what you're going to do, there's actually nothing wrong with the Mordhau or the Mordschlag overall as an entry option. It's something that you can do from long range that isn't try to, Hail Mary thrust a gap or swing your sword as hard as you can with the edge, because we already know that's not going to do anything. So in that, the Mordhau is, it's utilizing the length of your sword. It's a little bit shorter, and it's going to be able to do something that's going to then be able to bridge that gap between the longest range to the medium range to the short range, where you can still do all the same kind of half sorting, thrusting the gaps and grappling that everyone's known for trying to do. So I was pleasantly surprised, but as you'll see during the entirety of this test, I was even more surprised by some of the other things that are kind of Mordhau adjacent that I felt worked a lot better. Mordschlag test. This is my helmet. It is an armet. Oh, I got different glasses on. And basically, my theory is that A, hitting with the Crossguard onto my helmet is going to maybe do something after he dials it up a little bit under ideal conditions. But we're going to see what happens. So, gotta find my hole. Oh. Alright, so what's going to happen? You're going to hit me in the head, lightly. 45-degree angle, right about the top of the head. You cool with that? Try not to let it deflect down and hit you in the shoulder if you can. But the other thing is after every swing, I'm going to tell you whether or not we're good to go for another, and then you're going to dial it up like 10%. Cool? Alright, try the first little tap. Great, nothing. Next, little bit. Try and hit like here if you can. I just don't want you to get into my cross or my visor so my axis. Good. Go. Great. A little bit annoying. Go. Okay, you skipped off of that one, I can tell. Alright, so give it a little bit of wind up. Yeah. Alright, that's not comfortable. One more. Great. Alright, so what do you think you're at? Like 50, 60?
Probably about 50, yeah.
50? Alright, try to go like 70.
Okay.
Alright? Alright, you skipped a little bit, I think.
Yeah.
Do another 70. You're skipping.
I know.
Try to give it a good little arc so that you're coming down on there. Because the thing about this is that if you don't get the Crossguard to bite, it's going to do nothing. I can easily tell the difference. Alright? Yeah, that sucked. Alright, cool. So, the next thing we're going to want to do here is we're going to try it with a pommel on the other side.
Sure.
You good with that?
You're right.
Alright, so again, with the jab at first. Alright, absolutely nothing. A little annoying. Are you good? Oh, it's round. Okay, cool. Let's put him back. Do whatever you want. Alright. Align the edge. Okay. Yeah, you go. Do it like that.
What I'm worried about is crossguard or eye.
Crossguard you don't have to worry about as long as you get the range right. Yep. So it can't really go on myself. Cool?
That's good. Yep.
Okay. Annoying. Not bad. Cool. What do you got? Like 50, 60?
Probably like 40, 50.
Alright, go dial up again.
Alright.
You want to do it that way?
This is the best way that I can control it.
You want me to turn it around so we can kind of get like a better angle?
Yeah.
Whatever you want to do?
Yeah. It's leading with the left hand. I don't have the accuracy.
Oh, okay. I don't know what I can do about that.
I mean, I can do this fine.
You can do that fine?
Yeah.
All right.
Ready?
Go ahead. Cool. Yeah, watch that deflection. 8, 7.
Yeah, I think so.
80. 100. Yeah, no. So, seems like Crossguard, infinitely more impactful. The last one, when you got like a good 80 on there, it jostled me down just enough to tilt my helmet, which made my teeth kind of like grind against each other a little bit. It wasn't going to knock me out.
Yeah.
It wasn't really going to do anything other than just like give me a little bit of a wake up. So what I want you to do now is I want you to change the angle and try to go a little bit more vertical and try to hit like right here. Okay. No, with the crossguard. Because what I want to see here is that whether or not 45 or 90 works a little bit better. And again, taps at first, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Dragon.
Keep going. So this is what I figured was going to happen. Go. Yeah, there you go. Nice.
Okay.
Okay. So vertical, when it sticks, works a little bit better, but when it skips, absolutely nothing. All right. So, can you think of anything else you want to try? Not really?
Well, I mean, that.
You want to try Pommel? Yeah, let's try Pommel.
Okay.
All right. So, you want to do one-handed first?
Yes.
Okay, one-handed.
Yeah,
Okay. Not bad. Okay. What do you got, like 70?
That's probably 30, 40.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Dial it up a bit more. Actually, you know what? This is a good opportunity to check this out.
Yeah.
Has there been any damage?
Oh, God, yes.
Oh, interesting. All right, let's get closer. So these are some of the hits. As you can see, we got some minor dents, though what you're really going to want to look at is that these are actually two independent plates. This one on top has taken a little bit of surface denting and some scratching, but overall, I think when you get hit on the crest, you're getting hit in a place that's designed to have two layers, so that one can kind of cave a little bit and jostle and move around just like maybe a couple of millimeters. The one underneath can't really take any of that. And something else to notice here is that when I started getting some of the concussive force to go through a little bit, where it really started to impact me wasn't even really my head so much as my jaw. I think if I had like some kind of mouth guard that I could kind of bite down onto, I could take probably like 40-50% harder than that. Although obviously that's not really historical. The point really here being that when the vibrations are going through, because the blows are not displacing my head anywhere, I'm not getting what I would consider like boxing concussion like symptoms. Basically what happens is every time I get hit harder and harder and harder, I feel a little bit more here. It's not really much to like, I'm not feeling the metal hit my head, but what I'm feeling is that as that shock goes through my face, it ends up down here and it's actually messing with my teeth more than anything. So mouth guard, A, something that would definitely help a lot, but B, most important that like damage wise, pretty much nothing. He was swinging what, you got up to at least an 80 on one of those. On one of those swings. So under ideal conditions, like I guess if you could just swing it absolutely as hard as you could and you really got a good sticking point, you could probably get somebody to like get a mild concussion or again, in my opinion, probably more likely to break some of their teeth. But because you're not really rotating the head anywhere, I have a hard time believing that you're ever gonna like knock me out through that necessarily. The damage that I would experience by him going 100% over and over and over again would be more like, how do I describe this? Like just a pain compliance generality. I'm not gonna like fall unconscious and necessarily fall to the ground unless you're hitting me with something that has a little bit more ass to it. So, what's up? You wanna try it? Come on. But the other thing here is that that's a fetter. One thing that some people would say is that like the fetter doesn't have quite the same structure. The problem is that historical swords are also flexible. Obviously not flexible to that degree, but as you saw when he was holding it and he was swinging it, his top hand was about 75% of the way up, which means that there's not really a lot of flex where it matters. If he had maybe gripped it two hands all the way at the bottom of the sword and tried to swing, yeah, it would have flexed all over the place and he wouldn't have been accurate. But I think if you got one hand that's halfway up, like the sources show you to hold it, the flexibility of the fetter doesn't really seem to contribute all that much. Unfortunately, I don't have a real sword to try, so I don't really know for sure whether or not that would be a huge difference. I just kind of doubt it, especially given that fetters are longer and sometimes a little bit heavier than period accurate ones.
Have you tried being hit by a shorter fencer from low range?
Okay.
Like maybe hit like right here?
You want?
So
Hold on.
I'll try and do the rabbit kind of one, like just kind of like the short pommel strikes, the double hand, the one that I accidentally debugged on a concussive egg with.
All right. So, what are you gonna do?
I'm gonna try and pommel it like here.
Okay, I can tell you right now that's gonna hurt me way more simply because it's going to turn my head.
Okay.
So, all right, start out 10%. Yeah, I can already feel that in my chin, and it's very annoying. And you can probably see my head is turning with every one. This right now already hurts me way more than some of the 50, 60% like the pommel strikes. Go 10 more, one more time.
Oh shit.
Yeah, that, so right there, I have a ringing in my ears. That is the first time that has happened. So, was there any damage to the helmet?
No, it doesn't look like it.
Doesn't look like it? Let's see for
It
sure.
just seems like a shitty spot to hit on that mask.
Yeah, and honestly, I think it's ironic that like that's really where the vulnerability point is. But if you look at here, there's really not even scratching that I can see. It really just comes down to the fact that because of the angle, it was turning my neck like a punch. And just right then, I already am getting a headache. I didn't have a headache from everything else that just happened to me. I have a headache now. So that's actually really cool and really interesting.
That's what I thought it would do.
All right. You good to stop recording? Anyone else want to try anything?
Question, would different pommels and crossguards make a difference?
Probably.
I'm gonna get some.
Are you good?
That last one.
That was not even 100.
No, I'm sure.
Yeah.
You're slipping off. You're not getting a good context.
Yeah.
You definitely slipped off on that one. All right. I definitely felt that like hit my
It did.
my eyebrow here.
That's exactly
I
right.
think you're going a little low.
Yeah, you're pulling low.
So here's what you're gonna do. You're gonna do a little bit of a backswing.
Yeah.
And you're gonna try to make sure that your arms are going to the center. Because I think what you're doing is you're kind of doing like short, choppy punches. But I want you to get a little bit more of an arc, but not necessarily put everything you got into it right away, right? Okay? Yeah, there you go, there you go. That seems better. That's not bad. Now you skipped off on that one. Skip. Skip. Yeah. All right. So honestly, to me, felt exactly the same as the other crossguard. I didn't really find any kind of like important difference, but let's see if there's any difference in damage. Apologies for getting caught. All right. So he was kind of hitting me over here. Same kind of thing, bunch of scratches, a couple of dents. Maybe that one right there was you. But otherwise, like, yeah, these ones on the top of my head, these ones especially right here on the crest where it kind of flattens out, those are where it hits best. Obviously, the armor shape is going to really determine where you're going to want to hit. I didn't want anyone to hit me in the visor, not because I thought like anything serious was going to happen, but because if this kind of gets a bunch of dents, I don't really care. But if this visor gets dented to the point where like I have to repair it, that's really annoying. Also, these, I think that maybe could have, the crossguard could maybe slide in through that a little bit. If it just spread, yeah, I didn't want that to happen. So overall, it definitely worked a little bit better than I expected. I expected that I would feel pretty much nothing up until like the 70s and the 80s, whereas I felt something at the 50s and the 60s, and then up into the 70s and the 80s, it got to be like mildly painful. I'm still not 100% convinced that you could realistically knock me out, particularly, unless of course you were doing what JJ was doing, which is the pommel straight to the jaw. That one I actually buy a lot, because its ability to displace my jaw and turn my head really made a huge difference. I'm good. Honestly, and again, like, that's the one that hurt. Okay. Today, so far, that was the one, like, by 30% was way worse.
That was not full.
No, I know, no. That one I believe, and that's actually a pretty interesting thing to see. And now that might have a lot more to do with the fact that this is an armette, because it pinches in at the jaw here. That's going to be a unique kind of thing. If you had a Soleil, for example, the Bavor, the lower half, might be a little bit harder to pommel directly. You might accidentally get up here instead. But other than that, I can't think of anything else to try, while poor Tom here tries to re-straighten out the crossguard that he bent on my head.
It's the hilt.
Oh yeah,
Have you
that's
done-
fucked.
Have you done kind of like a rowing kind of hit?
So that was kind of what I had Ethan doing. So basically he was kind of holding it. He wasn't holding it like row the boat style, but he was kind of just doing like crossguard
Like a
punches.
half swing.
Yeah, a little bit. And then I was trying to get people to do a little bit more of a wind up. And I think that if you did that, you would get a little bit more like good centrifugal force. I do think it's important to point out though that one of the weakest hits that I was receiving consistently was when the crossguard would land first, but it would skip off of the angle. So that's one of those important things where the angle of your crest, and if you look at historical examples, they have a way more pronounced crest. I imagine that would actually pay dividends, because if anything was coming straight down on top of you and it managed to hit a sloped part of your armor, its ability to bite in and really deliver its force would just skitter off to the side. And every time somebody hit me and they didn't quite like get a good bite, it was like I was getting hit by nothing at all. All right, that's good. So that was the test. Now what I wanted to do one last time was go over my goals for this test and what I think are the results here. Because obviously when I went into this, I thought the Mordhau was going to be a lot more useless than it actually was. But what I found was that it still is a little bit of a niche technique, and I wanted to make it clear that dialing up certain intensities or actions of this test probably wouldn't result in wildly different results. And let me explain. So one of the things that I found was that generally with the crossguard, dialing something up to about 70 or 80% resulted in me taking a fairly significant enough damage that I wanted the test to stop. And the reason I wanted it to stop wasn't because I thought that 100% was going to knock me out. I think I made that pretty clear. But specifically because 70 or 80% was probably going to either bruise me or cause me to chip a tooth. And I want to make it clear that the reason I did this isn't because I think that that is the end goal of a Mordhau or a Mordschlag, but particularly because I wanted to be able to keep testing it. So in my opinion, I don't think the idea of knocking somebody out in one good big swing is really feasible, though it is certainly possible. But I would say that if you're trying to knock somebody out through their helmet, it's probably far more important for you to get rotational force on their head in some direction rather than coming straight down on top of it. Because as we saw, without that rotational force, you significantly limit the amount that the head can be, and more importantly, the brain can be jostled around. And of course, as we know scientifically, jostling the brain is what a concussion and a knockout literally are. So while I don't think that the Mordhau is necessarily useless, I do think it is technically possible that you could one-hit KO somebody, but you probably want to take a completely different action. But more importantly, I think that you'd really want to target a completely different area. So far, I've tested the gauntlets and the helmet, and the problem is, despite the fact that the gauntlets are a significantly, less protective than a helmet is and less thick, the issue is that arms move around. And if I was going to pick a target for the Mordschlag or the Mordhau, what I would pick was the cross-section of the neck and the shoulder, particularly because this area on a lot of people is open with only a little bit of chainmail protecting them. I genuinely believe that if you do a Mordhau or a Mordschlag to something that is only covered by chainmail, it's going to go right through it and probably break some bones, meaning that it's going to have a significantly higher shot of doing serious damage. Not only that, but it's also in the exact same plane of swinging as the head and the arm and the shoulder, meaning that, as it says in Peter von Danzig, I believe, that you can essentially trick your opponent into not knowing where exactly you're going to Mordschlag by aiming it generally at their head area and then pivoting to either their shoulder or maybe even lower to their hands, meaning that in a real test, in a real fight, no one's just going to let you take full-blown swings at their head. They're going to put up some kind of block. And what this does is it allows you to have several different targets that you can aim for where you could do some kind of damage. And now the other person who you're fighting doesn't necessarily know which one you're going to go for. If hitting somebody in the head hard enough with a Mordhau is plausible as far as knocking them out or killing them, that's great. But it does mean that if your opponent knows that that's the only place where you can hit them hard enough to do some damage, well, they're just going to put their arms or their sword in front of their head and know that chances are your Mordhau's not going to do anything anyway. So it's important to test these things, not only because we want to find out whether or not they work the way they're prescribed, but also because we have to be aware of the fact that any technique, regardless of whether it can kill you in one hit or not, needs to be put into the greater context of fighting. It needs to be made clear that regardless of how well the Mordhau was going to work in this test, it still needed to be part of a cohesive whole of kind of flowchart fencing. You needed to know what you were going to do to set up your Mordhau as far as distance and footwork, and most importantly, you needed to know what you were going to do if your Mordhau was parried or if it hit and it just didn't do anything. And these are very, very important contexts that when we look through the texts show us that actually the Mordhau doesn't really seem to be a one-hit kill, given that, people don't always seem to want to parry it, but also that it never seems to really just outright kill anybody, given that there are a bunch of follow-up techniques where we see people holding up their swords in a very similar fashion, as though they had just done a Mordhau, but either it missed or it just didn't have the intended effect. Meaning that going into this, we already sort of knew it wasn't going to do everything it was supposed to do, and that was primarily why I did the test. But I want people to understand that I'm not saying that the Mordhau is just a bullshit technique. It's a real technique, and one that you should learn how to do. But if you want to really learn how to do it, you need to be willing to put it into practice and put it into pressure testing. And from what I see here, I actually think it would be very viable to allow Mordhaus and Mordschlags in competition, so much as people understand that it's going to hurt a little bit, and more importantly, that if you don't put everything you have into it, you're actually probably not going to harm anybody or their armor to a significant degree. Meaning that you can throw it, kind of understand that maybe it's going to be a scoring target, not necessarily a debilitating one, and then you can practice all the follow-up techniques that you need to practice in order to make the Mordhau truly effective and truly cohesive in your fencing. So, with that, that's my conclusion. That's what I think this test tells us. And if you disagree, feel free to rant at me in the comments, as I'm sure you were already doing 5 minutes ago. And make sure to like and subscribe so you can watch me, hopefully get some more sparring footage up soon. Bye-bye.